Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first issue briefing of the third day of the annual meeting of the new champions. Those of you who are unfamiliar with this format will know that we're here on the outskirts of the convention centre here at Dalian for a reason. It's where we take the edgiest, most controversial and freshest conversations far away from the centre of action so we can say what we want and do as we please. The format is designed to be very short, hopefully high energy. I do hope you won't hear very much from me at all. I want you to do the talking, my panel here, and of course yourselves. So let's keep it as interactive as possible. Let's keep your hands moving. Comments are encouraged. Keep them brief, please. Questions, very much so. Disagreements, even more. Now, the session here is on China's carbon market, very topical in that there was a policy recommendation last week from the Chinese government clearing the way for and reconfirming implementation of a carbon market, of course, later this year. And of course, internationally, I believe, since with the Paris Climate Agreement continuing to occupy many people's attentions and lots of eyes and focus going towards China's perceived leadership role here, I think expectations are quite high on making this scheme work. So that's what I want to start with you, Changhua, if I may. And let me just introduce you first more formally. Changhua Wu, Director for China and Asia of the Office of Jeremy Rifkin, based here in the People's Republic of China. I'd very much like to hear your thoughts on whether this actually is the right way, given the problems we've had in Europe with an emissions trading scheme.
It's a difficult question to answer. On one side, I think there are positive things, and we literally decided to copy EU ETS. Back in 2011, everything started off the ground in 2013, starting with the 7 pilot schemes there. And just imagining, we're in China, so data issue, credibility issues, how to supervise, monitoring, everything like that. China didn't have really well developed system and mechanism in place back then. And since then, between then and now, I think by rolling out the piloting schemes, definitely has done a lot of positive things. So we started to look into the data, the registration, the infrastructure that were needed in order to get the trading off the ground. Secondly, actually really started to build up talents, and we literally built up a sector, carbon trading or carbon credit sort of services sectors there. But thirdly, which is probably more significant in a way, because the 7 piloting schemes, because the high-level attention of the carbon trading or carbon market in China, the awareness among the decision makers from a government side, from society, from the business community, of course, as well as from a society side, everyone recognizes that there's a carbon issue, right? And not most people do not follow international negotiations, but domestically, because of the 7 piloting schemes. So carbon has become very important some topic, if not the topic actually, it's very important on the table. So I think probably from that perspective, that's the biggest positive impact so far. But by saying that, actually, I think it's a huge learning process. We're not totally there yet. So to a certain extent, I even have my own reservation by being sort of watching the whole process of the short history over the last few years to see, China has to set targets, timelines, a commitment to deliver international Paris agreements and domestic priorities there. And then you have this sort of one of the many tools, instruments here, which is called carbon trading. To what extent this tool will be able to really being implemented to deliver the results that's needed? I have my huge question mark on my mind, but as I said, it's one of the many tools, but not the only tool.
Thank you, Changhua. And building that whole sector and the whole ecosystem and raising awareness are huge issues we'll come back to. Professor Boqiang from the China Institute of Studies and Energy Policy, Xiamen University, again based here in China, also proud to say something of a colleague working on our Global Future Council on the future of energy. So we've been working with the forum for quite some time. Let's start on the huge learning process comment that Changhua made. We've been having an emissions trading system in Europe for quite some time. It's failed to really generate a kind of effective market function. China's taken a lot of those, the architecture of that, but it's also been running pilot projects as well and trying to find a local solution. How would you say progress has been so far?
Well, we carry out the pilot testing based on the experience from EU and also from some from the United States. And I would say that the pilot testing, some success, some are not. It's not all good, okay? And when you think about it carefully, the main difference, I think there's quite a few differences. Some are, we are all facing together. Some are really particular Chinese issues. For example, the China market is larger because our emissions are far more larger compared to the European Union. And in terms of economic development among different provinces is even more uneven compared to European Unions. The affordability and also willingness to pay also not as good as in your market. And even more important is that our market, particularly for energy-intensive industry like electricity, is still controlled by the government. The price mechanism is really not a market mechanism. And if it's not market mechanism, if you, let's say that, for example, the electricity sector, which is the largest emitter in China, we consume roughly 45 to 48% of the coal. And yet that those power plants are so efficient that to squeeze furthermore intensive efficiency is quite difficult. Okay, now that if on-grid tariff is controlled by the government, it has nothing to do with end consumer tariffs. Now we just squeeze this side and squeeze those guys. Those guys have really could not respond that much, but at the same time, we do not really affect the end consumers. So what do we achieve? So those are really Chinese specific issues. That's not the European issues that we have to deal with. And also the social stability, social goals, that's also quite different between China and European Union. So put together that, yes, we learned something from European Union, but on the other hand, there's still a lot of issues this is really Chinese specific. So I would say the progress is there, but the negotiation is still ongoing. And I believe that the issue is far more complicated than we thought. And in fact, we can see the pilot testing, even the some of them prices are 50-something RMB and others only 14, something like that. So given this kind of uneven, how do you organize an effective national market is really a big challenge. But in my view, that we should force it out and to see what happens. Because if keep negotiating and wait, it's never end. As I mentioned, that there's so many problems, so complex, and waiting and negotiating is really not a good solution for the market itself. So that's a force it out and see what happens.
So we're ready to go now, force it out now rather than prevaricate. Because if I'm not mistaken, the initial plan was to launch around this time, June, July 2017.
Yeah, before
but
the
it
end
seems
of
to
this
me
year.
now, now it's a delay, at least until the end of this year, possibly.
That's the current saying, before the end of this year.
Okay, okay. And if we're ready to go now, then we'll just let the market evolve and we'll see. It's not worth getting these negotiations right. It sounds to me, from what you're saying, with pricing, the pricing mechanism being what it is, if it goes out now, with the electricity providers are going to have to force a lot of this extra cost back onto consumers.
Someone has to pay the bill.
Yeah. Somebody got to pay for it. And in my view, let's force it out. Even though we cannot achieve the success most of us expected at the beginning, so what could be worse? Some trading is always better than no trading at all.
No, it's really bad. Rather than just talk about trading for the sake of trading, actually, this is more like it's a tool. It's one of the instrument, the policy tools to deliver the reduction, lift up the efficiency. So trading itself, actually, is really from economics perspective to look at what's the lowest, the cheapest solutions for now, right? And so you create the sort of demand, supply and demand there. But if you look at the overall, the energy sector, different policies, energy efficiency has been among the top priorities in China. So we have, over the years, we have a lot of schemes already being implemented. If you look at renewable energy, and so renewable energy, China has done a great job. There are many challenges, but we definitely leading globally. And just last month, recently, China rolled out this green, called a green certificate, actually, quota, right? And so there's a certificate that could be traded on the market for renewable energy.
And yet coal production has gone up in 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
Not much, actually. The 2017 coal...
It's arrested a decline. There's been a decline. If I'm,
it's also declined.
I have to admit, I read the Western press, but according to the Washington Post, coal production in China has increased this year.
No, I wouldn't. So I wouldn't challenge you to that extent. I don't fight with you actually, but I don't think that could be sort of dramatized or whatever stuff like that. And so to a certain extent, actually, if we say we need to put a price on carbon, which is the international language, all the business sectors actually are heard so far at the forum, in different forums. Actually, everyone said we need a price on carbon. So carbon is not free in China today, and there is a price there. Already, because all the schemes actually already enforcing that way. Of course, carbon market, carbon trading is one of the tools actually adding to that sector. I agree with Professor Lin. I think China has to just continue, no matter how difficult that is. We have to roll out according to the recent announcement. I think the NDRC national government already set the total allowances, whatever. But how do they allocate actually the allowances? I think that part still being negotiated. So I think China is definitely moving forward. As I said early on, it's not the only tool that's going to really deliver China's national, determined commitment to NDC to the Paris Agreement, but it's one of the many tools we definitely need to go ahead. There are many sort of, I call it side benefits actually of doing so. In that process, the data, the infrastructure, the awareness, the capability, all growing up actually towards the direction. So make sure, if there is carbon-related expertise or knowledge, whatever, we're definitely building up in that process.
I'd encourage this conversation to be about carbon reduction as well, rather than just a market. It's an enabler towards a lower carbon future. And we're talking about markets, and we're talking about renewable energy, when we're seeing great progress in building huge solar farms and wind farms and decommissioning and switching off coal-fired power stations. We're asking, and I'm focusing on the electricity sector here, we're asking a lot of our electricity sector. Is it too much? Are they going to have to get some more support? Have we had these supplementary conversations about whether consumers are able to pay the extra, whether more funding is going to be available to manage industry's conversion and adaptation to a new system?
Right. In my view, that yes, the renewables really has some impact on the electricity sector as a whole, and also coal-fired sector particularly, because as the hours drop very quickly, even though that the hours for the renewable also no good, but its decline is not as much as the coal-fired. So in a sense that we did achieve something. But to ask him more from the coal-fired sector at this point is very difficult, because not because the sector is not efficient, it's because our pricing mechanism is really still not responsive to the coal prices. And since electricity still produces 70% by the coal-fire, so how we deal with this? The main emitter, and also eventually if there's a carbon market coming out, that someone is going to take the biggest hit. Mm-hmm. How to handle these kind of issues, it becomes critical, important for this complex carbon market to handle. But as I said, let's get it started. Okay, mm-hmm. to begin with one way or the other, and let's see how they respond. Because it based on the current carbon prices at about some province only about $2, something like that. I don't believe that the company going to respond to that.
I would be very interested to know whether there are any views in our audience about whether get it out there and let's just rock and roll with the scheme, get it moving is the right way, or whether a more phased, more nuanced introduction. So please do stick your hand up. A lady in the front row. Can we get a microphone over to this lady here, please? Could you tell us where you're from and also your name, please?
Sure. My name is Gracie. I'm from Laurel Strategy, and then we're doing the consulting. And I have actually two questions. So far, we understand that China originally talked about to focus on the 8 sectors. Now we'll be starting the carbon market for 3 sectors. So we want to know what's going on for the other 5 sectors. And secondly is, we know that all the environmental exchanges in the 7 pilot areas, they all want to be the dominant leader to open the carbon market. And we also hear a lot of rumor going on and says that Xiamen will be the dominant efforts. So do you have any prediction or like internals that you can share with us? Thank you.
Well, to answer your first question, the down to 3 is basically just for convenience. It's something easy to take care of. We, in fact, pick up the 3 sector, which is the most easier in terms of to get accurate emission numbers. Much easier to allocate the quarters and that kind of stuff. So but don't worry, those guys will come back later, okay? So it's not really a problem of 3 or 7, it's the problem of how we get started at the correct step. That's the first question. Second question, they are still fighting, and we still don't know who will win.
I don't know either. I do not have the insight. Xiamen becomes a very important part agenda. Something in Chinese is 1,000 a year legacy, whatever, stuff like that. And they're probably just wide as it gets, actually. A lot of resources, expertise probably will be concentrated there. But whether this national carbon market will be a sort of the headquarters or not, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. And, but I think one thing is for sure, I don't think any of the 7 will be becoming the dominating ones. That's for sure.
We're over halfway through this very short, brief session, folks, so don't forget to, don't hesitate to get your hands up. A gentleman in here, please. Thank you.
I have one question, and depending on the answer, maybe a second question. Is the carbon trading going to be purely business to business, or will the consumers be involved? And if consumers are going to be involved, how will you prevent, or how will the Chinese prevent some of the real problems that happened in Europe with lots of fraudulent activity trying to scam consumers into paying inflated prices for credits?
At this moment, it's business. It's mostly business. If you look at the 7 piloting schemes, actually, the government is now, it's a starting point, actually, to look at the amount of emissions. We need to address the biggest emitters there. It's a sector that the lady just said, actually. Originally, in the beginning, we said 8, right? So the coverage is 8 sector. It's not economy-wide. Now we're starting with the 3 for the readiness. We have to make sure if we get this off the ground, we have to do it really correctly, whatever, stuff like that. So at this moment, so the answer to your first question is business business and facilities.
But we do encourage the consumers to come into the use different programs.
Voluntary, so there are different
participation. Right,
there are different ones. So at this moment, they are not this way. So there are different innovative platforms, whatever, for individuals. If you want have the awareness, desire to participate, or whatever. But at this moment, they are not participating in the government sort of scheme at this moment.
What else is in the country's armory, the toolkit, when it comes to meeting its Paris obligations? I'm conscious again of the possibly unreasonable burden placed on China.
That's precisely the point.
In the wake of the US decision to pull out of Paris, and you're the great hope. What are the other options available? Because this is too big to fail now, this scheme.
No, we really haven't seen that coming, because everybody now just kind of imagine, think about it. U.S. energy company or other energy intensive companies or other companies facing a good environment, so-called low-cost environment in the common ones, and we are increasing it. Somebody got to pay for it, right? Now, how fair would that be for a Chinese company to compete with U.S. company? Mm-hmm. We're going to meet each other somewhere, right? Almost everywhere. How are we going to compete? So those are the issues. I think that after the U.S. withdrawal, right now we only talk about no funding, talk about no confidence. But later on, we're going to talk about competitiveness. I'm pretty sure about that. Mm-hmm. And those are also another difficulties for China to carry out the carbon market.
Yeah, a couple of points actually. I think so far, Trump has said he wants to renegotiate, right? So we don't know yet what's going to be renegotiated, to what extent actually the international community will say, yeah, anyone who wants to renegotiate whatever you do. So we don't know yet. There is a sort of a couple of years ahead of us actually to understand it down to that level of the details there. Second point actually, just a follow up to Professor Lin said. Over my professional life, I think there was always a complaining from the EU-US side, the playing field, whether that's leveled or not, right? So particularly on the environmental side. And so now, actually, very interesting enough, if we'll see how that goes, And the argument started to sort of shifting, turn around, basically saying, wait a second, right? It's not fair to our Chinese business or other developing country or continue to be in the Paris Agreement. If US is not in, it's not fair. It's not level with the playing field. So this is sort of an interesting shifting dynamic happening now. I agree with Professor Lin. We don't know yet, and so there are a lot of things for us to think through, so grapple with, and so we'll see how that goes. But on the positive side, actually, there are a few things let me add. One, I definitely commented very sort of actively on media since the day actually President Trump announced that, I think including Professor Lin as well. We had to voice our opinions, whatever, stuff like that. But on the other side, actually, the bright spot is, I think this is going to be, the word that history will tell. So we'll see down the road, whatever the historians will write about this period of the history. I think the biggest part is, I think the consensus is, this is the moment, because we're talking about the new industrial revolution with all the technology development. We're literally creating a grand new economy. So the efforts now, trading, taxation, whatever, is literally to shrinking the old economy, and in the meantime, really build up the new ones. So this is a critical moment for international community to build a bigger pie. We'll see how big the pie will be. If everyone is in this together, we're going to be able to build this pie much faster, much bigger, right? We're all in it, benefiting from it. So now, if US say, I'm the world's largest economy, I don't want to be part of it. I somehow want to stay in the shrinking part. I think that's where the story will be, to what extent US could really afford or willing to be sort of, dragging staying back, to say, I'm not going to be part of it. I think that's going to be my view, actually, of looking at that. So from that perspective, as I said, we all know China, EU continues to go ahead. Hopefully all the others will be. So it's not just to say carbon, of course, narrowly in a way. It's how we grow differently. That's the fundamental. And that's where the future will be, right? We need to be inclusive, be participatory, and the technology today available made this possible. So we all could be coming together towards the new future rather than staying behind.
And it's a dynamic I'd like to develop in the short time we have left. If I'm correct, Professor Lim, you mentioned that Chinese competitiveness would be hurt immediately by such a scheme. And yet, conversations we like to have and foster dialogues here at the forum around the creation of a new modern economy based on new technology. So is this going to be a competitive driver of competitive advantage for China? Or is it going to be a millstone around China dragging growth backwards and slowing down the economy?
Well, I truly believe this is going to be positive because China has been in a way that it's growth with high growth and really put a lot of pressure on the resources and also environment. And have some changes. It's going to be good for the economy because we are facing a problem which is faced by all other nations during the development stage. Now it looks like we are going to go into a different development stage and a technology and also the business model like carbon market. And right now we are using the compulsory renewable. All of this put together is going to be good for the country there, looking for the quality growth instead of a growth which has a lot of problems. Yeah.
Yeah, the way I would look at it, say the train is already off the station. Paris Agreement has done a few things. One is vision. The vision is pretty much we know where we want it to be at the future, taking into consideration all the global challenges, climate change, whatever, stuff like that. Second thing actually is really a roadmap. And we set it's periodical targets, whatever, so we know that how step by step we're going to go. And with all the technologies, actually, innovation underground, countries like China, EU, actually charting the future, I think we're moving towards that direction. It's a long journey. It's a journey. The journey won't be just smooth, right? So we just go all the way, from yesterday to tomorrow. So in between, there are going to be a lot of trade-offs. There's going to be a lot of hiccups. I think, China using one example for some renewable energy development in China. On the positive side, everyone recognizing the huge contribution from China, leading the renewable energy sector, right? Not only domestic, but globally. If you look down to the details, I believe here at the forum, it's been discussed many, many times. We installed just so much capacity, but we're not using them. Why? Because whatever the force pushed for the installations, we didn't really have the grids, the market, whatever, developed yet. So on one side, actually, it's a huge loss for those developers at this moment. But if you put that in the bigger picture, we know pretty much for sure, other elements are coming on board. So the general trend is not sort of shiftable. I don't think we're going to turn different ways. I think the direction is clear, the vision is clear, consensus is there, and we're all in this together. But on the way, on the journey, we're going to learn the trade-offs, curves, whatever. But I have no doubt we're going to address this together.
I think that from energy perspective, what I want to see is that from today go to tomorrow, that our carbon emission stable or decline. That's whatever means to achieve it. Carbon market is definitely only one of it. Right now, look at last 2 or 3 years. Because we choose a slower economic growth, we choose to develop renewables, nuclear. We also try to replace the coal by more natural gas, etc. And our CO2 emissions actually decline or stabilize. So in my view, that as long as we put a policy together, such that we're going to see from this year to next year, the carbon emission from China is actually declining, not increasing. That would be good, yeah. But let's hope that carbon market will contribute to this.
I've got one more question, but who else wants to? Let's see, gentleman here in the front row.
So this question is not directly related, but I think for, say, One Belt and One Road and for AIIB's effort, there is a lot of discussion about whether it should do coal-fired power plant, these kind of considered to be relatively dirty things. How do you look at it from both balancing this developmental perspective versus the environmental perspective?
Well, that have to be looked at from economic angle. For example, you develop a coal-fired power plant, yes, it had to be emission. But think about if you could put in the renewables, would that work? That's the first question. The second question, that once we put in the infrastructure, would this infrastructure development is going to create the other development so that you can reduce emission from somewhere else? So from argument, it's not as obvious as we look at the first moment. For those countries really have no infrastructure, it's really very difficult to address environmental issues. For China, right now, we have the environmental issue. If we determine to address it, we should be able to achieve it, because we have very good infrastructure at this moment. And by the way, for a country that you really need an infrastructure, it's a matter of when to put it in and what to put it in. But you need to put in something that's more practical and economically acceptable. So yeah, jump to the renewables is really a good step because it's really clean. But the problem, the jumping is that easy or not. By jumping, how much do you pay for it? And how do you achieve? How much do you achieve? So those kind of balances, it's not as intuitive as it's deep. Yeah.
Can I just add anecdotally, actually? Last fall, I was in Korea attending, I forgot the big conference. So I was at this particular session on renewable energy. It's a sort of a ministerial level. So many ministers from Asia Pacific regions were in the room. And so there was a report released that day on the spot, basically telling us, very fascinating. So the year before, so 2015, so globally, actually, renewable energy, if you look at investment installations, developing countries already exceeding developed one. And if you look at Asia, in particular, it's very representative, actually, so in that case. And so then the conversation carried on to say, okay, all the ministers in the room, and why go for coal, right? The renewable energy is here, it's your hope, it's your chance, it's your opportunity. Interesting enough, I wouldn't name countries specifically. More than half of them were asking the questions, wait a second, how about the costs? Could we afford it? If we could not today, we still cannot use them. So that they're on their mind, that's number one. Second point I want to echo is really the infrastructure. Infrastructure, not only physical infrastructure, but institutional, right? Including the financial sector, sort of the institutional. So if you do not have those elements together, it's difficult. No matter how wonderful the technologies are on the table today, you just cannot deploy them. You do not have the enabling context to do so. Thirdly, I think that's becoming more and more so for developing countries, is human talents, right? You do not expect, say, Americans coming over to Philippines and say, you just I install this for you. You need to maintain, you need to create a local job. So elements like that started to creating this mismatch of timing. Ideally, all the pieces are coming together, on board together, so that you deliver the goal, but somehow, even China, as I mentioned, actually, installation of renewable energy, you start to see the mismatch on the timeline. That remains a challenge, actually.
And yet, we talk about the importance of leapfrogging generations of technology and moving to a sustainable future fast as well. So this is a discussion we're not going to finish here. But very, very briefly, I want to just ask one final question, and it's to your point, Changhua, about the direction being clear. But I want to refer to the scheme that was raised in the US last week about a carbon tax. And so my question is quite simply, the direction may be clear, but is it the wrong direction? Could China perhaps be better served reducing emissions through a taxation system?
This has been a long conversation, actually, debate within the policy community in China.
You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, which one? I do not see if they are designed well, I see their coexistence. I think they are all policy tools, whatever, but the designing of the tools, how to make sure they work reinforcing each other rather against each other. So that's the short answer.
Yeah. In my view, that I'm an economist. I perform market. Okay, always perform market such that you will create a price signal, will create efficiency, everything. But in my view, in this particular case, that you really want to achieve something very short and very clear, very transparent, tax still, in my view, a better choice than market. Because market, when I talk about it earlier, I think the message is quite clear. We are not facing the problem that which all the European Union is facing. We are also facing the problem our own, China specific. So put together, the whole market scheme is going to be huge, complex.
Europe has been trying to get a market system up and running for years, and otherwise, you're right, you could put a tax in, a bit of heavy lifting at the beginning, people get used to it, you normalize that situation much faster.
Right, and then many people worried about what tax can come and go, like what happened in Australia. But in China, that's not the case. If we determine to put tax, it will stay there.
Well, this is a policy discussion I imagine will continue, and maybe we'll talk about it this time next year when we reconvene for the annual meeting of the new champions.
We see the progress. We review the progress next year.
And not just us in the room or us in the building, but I think the whole world is looking forward and wishing you the best and hoping that you have success in your endeavours as a country. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, those of you in the room, and thank you also to those of you watching online. This session is now closed. Yeah.